Howdy howdy, this is Minecraft, but there are custom swords. This data pack has been shown off by many of your favorite YouTubers, such as Nesterio, Bionic, and Comments to Crafting, as well as many other channels. And today's update adds 5 new swords to the pack. But if that is not enough swords for you, there are 25 other swords that are currently in the pack. They do all sorts of cool stuff, like the sand sword, which drags mobs down into sand, or the flower pot sword, which will trap a mob inside of a flower pot for a short time. There's even a beacon sword that is pretty crazy, so you're going to want to get your hands on these. You can get access to all 25 of those swords, as well as loads of other exclusive content, with a $1 or more donation to my Patreon. So check out the iCard in the top right to learn more about that. Oh, and look at this graph. It says 16.8% of you guys are subscribed, but like, why? You should hit that unsubscribe button. Don't let me get to 10,000 subscribers. Now, onto the swords that were added in today's update. So we have the sign sword, the bell sword, the carrot sword, the melon slicer, and the anvil sword. And the anvil sword in particular is pretty crazy, so make sure to stay tuned for that one. Okay, so the sign sword is pretty silly. When you hit a mob with it, it will place down a random sign into the world that has the mob's name on it. So we hit a husk, it says husk. Cow says cow. And so on and so forth. And as you can see, it's a random sign. You can hit them multiple times. Overall, pretty silly. And of course, it can't like destroy blocks in the world or whatever. It has to make sure that it's replacing an air block. So no issues there. Overall, this one's just pretty silly. Next up is the bell sword, and whenever you hit a mob with the bell, it will get stunned due to the loud noise and like, you know, like the clanging bell smacking its face. So, while stunned, like my other swords that stun, the mobs will not take as much damage. Great example there. They end up getting resistance 3 while stunned. That way you're not able to do a ridiculous amount of damage to them. Also, you're not able to re-stun a mob that's currently stunned. So you can't just keep them in a loop forever. The carrot sword, besides just looking absolutely fabulous, is a bit of a silly idea, but to be fair, which of my swords is not a silly idea? When you hit a mob, you get night vision for 10 seconds, because as we all know, carrots are good for your eyes. There's also a golden carrot version in the Patreon exclusive swords that will give you a longer amount of night vision. In theory, this would be pretty nice when you're caving because you'll encounter a lot of mobs and now you can see for a little bit. Next up is the melon slicer, and then we'll move on to the anvil sword after that. But this one is pretty crazy. So by itself, it really doesn't do very much damage. You can see there's like a melon explosion whenever you hit a mob. And yeah, I'm not dealing very much damage to this husk. It deals 2 base damage, and then the explosion deals a bit more. However, when you are attacking a group of mobs, this is when the sword really becomes useful, because the melon explosion can hit all of the mobs in the area, and it can do a fairly decent amount of damage. It's not incredible, but it's a lot like a firework sword with a bit of a smaller radius. You can see it was also hurting me because this melon explosion can hurt you. But overall, very powerful sword, and would be really useful in like mob farms and stuff. And especially if you're standing at max distance, you're not going to take damage from the explosion, and you can deal loads of damage. And also, it just looks super cool. And finally, we have the anvil sword, and this one is one of the more powerful swords in the pack, needing kind of a ridiculous amount of iron in the recipe, but when you hit a mob, it will drop an anvil on it. And so the sword by itself does 6 damage, same as an iron sword, but then you combine that with the anvil, which will fall and deal a lot of damage. This sword is really powerful, and it will work on players and mobs and really whatever. Oh, and if you're curious, this is not a real anvil falling in the world. This is one that I had to custom code. Because of that, it can never like become a block in the world or whatever. So no, you don't get to farm free anvils, but you can kill lots of mobs with it. You can see it can work pretty decently on a horde of mobs as well. And you can drop multiple anvils at a time, and it can get really out of hand, honestly. So love this sword, very powerful, very useful. Sometimes misses because it is a projectile falling from the sky, but overall, super cool sword. Those were the 5 swords added in today's update. However, remember that there are another 25 you can get right now with a $1 or more donation. So do check that out if that is something you're interested in. And I mean, who wouldn't want a potato sword or a conduit sword? So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like on it. Hit that subscribe button to make sure not to miss out on future updates to this pack and others. And I'll see you in the very next video. Goodbye.